Lessons from the bottom, how being the youngest shapes who we become. Let me start by saying I did not choose this life of being the youngest child. This life chose me. And what I mean by this life chose me is I came at last after everybody. They chose the best bedrooms, made their own mistakes, and stole all the spotlight that I don't know if I'll ever be able to reach. Being the youngest can mean many different things. Either you're able to shine through your independence, or you become an impersonator of your siblings who have fully finished everything and will continue to finish everything first. Well, all in all, I have lived in the shadow of my older siblings. I ultimately got to watch them carve their paths, find their ways, and be full as a result. And then there was me, the youngest, determined to just follow what they have done and wondered where was my own personal mark. Being the youngest can be overlooked as an easy path each step you take, but you get trapped in the undermined secrets of the bottom of the family. My older siblings were the high-achieving students. Here they are, and you all in this room probably almost know them because I was also the, oh my god, are you related to them child. My sister joined all these clubs, she loved to work, and she even donated blood. And my brother was the star on the football team, and he always hung out with his friends. But guess what? They still both maintain their perfect 4.0 GPA. And better yet now in college, they both maintain that status. For me, the pressure didn't always come in words. It came with the raise of an eyebrow when I didn't match the test score, or the silent disappointment when I didn't pick the same classes. No matter what I achieved, it would always come with a little asterisk, did they do as well as their siblings did? That pressure sneaks into your confidence, it makes you second guess your choices, and it makes you wonder, am I enough, or am I just a watered down version of what has come before me? And here's the hardest part. You begin to think that your life will only matter if you fit the mold that they have already made for you. So instead of following your passions, you follow a path that isn't yours just to stay safe, just to keep the peace, and to stay approved. Being the youngest can be liberating. You have the space to experiment, and you have a sense of less parental expectations. People say they might give you some more freedom, but that freedom can tend to feel a little more isolating because now it's hard to know where you fit in because your siblings have already defined the family identity. By the time you come along, there's a system in place. Your siblings have already chosen the activities, wore the hand-me-downs, and set a tone for what's normal in the family. So instead of stepping off a path, you follow what they've done. And even the independence doesn't always stick. If you want to dress differently, think differently, dream differently, there's always this quiet pull that you need to fall back in line because now you tend to let somebody down. For example, makeup. When I was younger, I wanted to wear makeup when I was going to walk through those high school doors. And my sister, she never wore makeup, and still today, she never gets ready. She just throws on a pair of clothes and goes out of the house. So when I mentioned this to my mom, she felt as if I was stepping away from what Brianna has already done. So it felt like I was letting her down, and I felt scared to move on a path that I just thought everybody else in high school was already doing. Being the youngest means people often underestimate your need for space to grow. They assume you're just okay, following a path that isn't yours, but the challenge is it's hard to learn how to step away when you need to find your own voice and trust it because all you hear are the echoes of what your siblings have done behind you. And here's something I just learned to understand. You don't have to feel ignored to feel invisible. As the youngest, I was surrounded by older siblings who have already claimed their identities and parents who are a little more busier, more tired, and a little more checked out. But I wasn't neglected. I tended to just turn into a sense of background noise. And the thing about background noise is that you learn to speak quietly, and not because you want to, but because you need to, and you don't want to get in the way. Because being easy, being small, is the only way that you'll ever be able to be loved. So Growing up, my mom worked from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night, and she actually works here. And my dad used to work at a nursing home as a chef, so he was actually never home, and when he was home, he was asleep. And my siblings were older, so they were always out and about, and I always had to figure everything out on my own. So I learned how to cook dinner, and cooking dinner became a little bit of a struggle because I would have to cook for myself, but I'd also have to cook a little extra because everybody else would come home hungry. So it turned into a sense of life that I was living alone, and my mom would call me at night and she'd be like, "Is dad asleep?" And I'd always say yes. And she'd be like, "Okay," so we would hang out Saturday. But Saturday wasn't when I wanted to feel loved. It was actually today. And I wanted to be with people today and not wait for the long run when everybody else was just going to come home and we were all going to have a family thing. But let me tell you, one of the weird things about being the youngest child is that people start to stop caring. And not because they don't want to, but because they feel and assume that you know what you're doing because you've watched everybody else do it. And people assume that you don't need help. So when you want to ask for help, nobody's really listening. And it becomes, you start being to keep quiet because you feel like low maintenance is the only way you'll ever find a place in this family for you. See, now I'm the baby of the family, and my parents were seasoned vets when I came out. I mean, my siblings have already put them through the ringer of the late night curfews, the messy bedrooms, and ultimately the attitudes. And I was treated with a sense of caution, but it wasn't don't go near the stove caution. It was the type of caution that made me feel like I was less than what I actually was. And it always came with the, "Oh, you're too young to do this," or "You're too young to do that." And it put me into a ringer that I wasn't ready for really anything, and I didn't know how to get ready for that stuff. But let me tell you, overprotectiveness, it doesn't just begin to affect your childhood, it begins to affect yourself. And as you go on and grow up, it begins to affect yourself with asserting yourself in challenges. Because now those challenges feel like you can't do them because you aren't ready. But in reality, you are ready, you just have this state of mind that you're never going to be ready. Now, let me take you to a family who has a fair share of family drama. Shameless. And if you ever watch this show, you know this is just full of a dysfunctional family who's trying to figure their lives out. But the one person that stuck with me the most was Liam Gallagher. And Liam Gallagher is the youngest of the Gallagher family. And Liam's struggle with his identity is painfully real. He makes mistakes, big ones, because he's not sure where he fits in. And that's something a lot of families can relate to. You're trying to build a future, but you're just known as the baby in the room, and that's not an easy place to be. And that journey is a journey that a lot of us face, even if you're not the youngest sibling, but you tend to realize that you don't have to live in the shadow of your older siblings. And the struggle's real, but eventually you'll come to a point where you can carve out your own identity. And this is a quote from Dr. Frank Soloway. He's an expert on birth order. And he said that there's something called sibling de-identification. And sibling de-identification is a fancy way of just saying, I need to figure out who I am, but the problem is I don't know who I am. And that's me being compared to my older siblings. I'm constantly just following what they've done, and they've already set the stake where they are in the territory that they have, and now I have to find my own place in this family and distance myself from them. But here's the catch. When you're constantly trying to differentiate yourself from who you truly are, you tend to not live up to your own expectations. And you're just trying to be your older brother and sister. Because looking at the bright side, they've already done everything, and now you just have to make the mistakes, and it might not be as scary. But honestly, being the baby, there's self-discovery, and you get stuck in the limbo of trying to figure out who you are as a whole. But here's the thing. This is me as a younger child. You don't have to define yourself. The youngest child might feel invisible and overshadowed, but you don't have to live in that realm. It's hard to be last in line. It feels like we're just trying to prove ourselves, but you have to take a chance and realize that what you're learning from your siblings' mistakes is something new and something different for yourself. So to all the youngest siblings out there, yes, it's hard, but trust me, in time you will find your own voice. And this voice may not be the loudest, but it will be the voice that will end up meaning the most to you. The world's waiting for you to define yourself, and that's a gift only you can give. Thank you.